when you go through life and you just see a headline, well, the university canceled this mascot, oh, well, the university renamed this building, you kind of can easily forget because it's just so much. And that's the point of the database. We won't forget. We are going to remember and chronicle and make sure that this Orwellian effort is tracked.
Hey everyone, William Diaz here with Rebel News. We know that the university year is starting extremely shortly, both here in Canada and in the United States. Universities are places where, future politicians go to educate themselves, future lawyers go to educate themselves, where young people go to learn new things about life to get ready for a future career. But what happens when every right-wing or contrarian viewpoint gets censored? Doesn't look good for the future of our society, where every conservative point of view is cancelled because of the leftist cancel culture. It's really not good for the future of a society. So recently, the College Fix, a conservative newspaper that is run by students, created a cancel culture database which attempts to document and pinpoint every cancel culture incident that occurred in American college campuses and Canadian college campuses to expose the leftist cancel culture that is happening in universities nowadays. So today I have with me Jennifer Kabbany, who is the editor-in-chief of the College Fix, to talk to me more about their cancel culture database and talk to me more about cancel culture generally speaking in universities. So Jennifer, could you just talk to us a little bit more about what you and your students that work at the College Fix worked on, which was the cancel culture database?
Yes, so we wanted to chronicle all the memory holding, cancellations, shutdowns, shoutdowns, everything that had been silenced or censored over really the last decade. We wanted to create like a definitive database that tracks and monitors and quantifies this cancel culture phenomenon in higher education, both in America, and we have plenty of Canadian universities in the database as well. Yeah,
no, definitely. What would you say was one of the most major incidents that you saw through your years as the editor?
It really what always strikes me as incredible is when they strip names, strip mascots, suspend professors, won't allow students to meet or have funding. It's just it's like death by a thousand cuts. You have one incident, one headline, and it kind of like in one ear and out the other. But when you take a look at it as a whole, what you see is an incredibly pressing and problematic system in higher education where the victims have actually become the oppressors. And they're setting the narrative and they're saying what's allowed and what's not allowed. And in the meantime, they're rewriting history, changing our traditions, changing our cultures, and really erasing so much of what we were founded upon, both in America and in Canada.
Yeah, basically just stripping our cultures of Western values that are the basic foundations of our society. So why did you think it was so important for you to start the database? And how is it working? If one goes on your website, how does it work basically?
So essentially we have, when you load up the homepage on thecollegefix.com, in the upper right hand corner, you'll see our cancel culture database, and you click on that, and then you can search the entire database. Now, when we launched in September of 2021, we had a little over 1,200 entries. Now we're up to 1,575 entries. So we've added over 250 entries over the last school year. You can search the database by topic, whether it's a building name or a mascot, or you can search, by date. You can search by school. If you enter in a school name, you can search that way. Again, when you go through life and you just see a headline, well, the university canceled this mascot, oh, well, the university renamed this building, you kind of can easily forget because it's just so much. And that's the point of the database. We won't forget. We are going to remember and chronicle and make sure that this Orwellian effort is tracked. And we'll be, the original truth tellers. So you don't have to come to us to find what things used to be like on campus.
Yeah, and as you said, 1,500 entries in the past is that 4 years?
So we launched in September with a little over 1,200 entries, and now currently, as of today, we have 1,575 entries. So every entry represents either a successful cancellation or an attempted cancellation, because we didn't want to just chronicle all the successful cancellations, we also wanted to paint a picture of how broad this problem is by listing the attempted cancellations. And you could actually search our database that way too. If you only want to see things that were canceled, you can search that way. If you want to see things that were protested, you could search that way, or you can just, search the entire database as a whole.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that in 2022 alone, there were 300 cancel culture incidents.
Yeah, it's fair to say there was about that many. There would be a situation where I might realize we missed one, from back in the day, so I added it in. But by and large, we were adding 2, sometimes 3 a week for the whole school year. It's never ending, and that was the point of the database. It's like, how are we going to track this craziness? Somebody's got to make a list, So that's what we did.
That's unbelievable. And, in college campuses, that's where you form our next leaders. That's where our next scientists, our next lawyers are going to go out to study, our next politicians. What do you think the impact of this is going to be? How big of an impact will this have on our future society?
Well, one thing I will mention, because I know that you're in Canada, we have an entry about University Laval, and they suspended a professor, Professor Provost. He was an immunization and microbiology professor. They suspended him for 2 months because all he did was question the efficacy of vaccines for children. And for that, they suspended him for 2 months. So what kind of real world implication does this have? Well, if we can't have the debate on the impact of vaccines on our children, and everybody goes and gets their children vaccinated, and then 10 years down the road, we realize, we should have asked some tougher questions, because we're seeing, some ramifications from silencing dissent, or even just asking scientific questions, the scientific method of inquiry that's been established for millennia. Lives are on the line, literal lives are on the line. So, at the end of the day, this is serious stuff.
Well, 100%, and especially since we know that CDC went back on their words in terms of the efficacy of vaccine mandates in the
exactly. We're seeing them, all the people that were questioning professors, many science professors in America and Canada saying, hey, wait a minute. This is not settled science, and we need to ask the tough questions and look at the data. And they were silenced, and they were shut down. And in many cases, especially in Canada, they were suspended. We had articles taken down. So now, they're being vindicated, but it's too little too late. Some of the damage has already been done. So I think there's a Bill 32 that was introduced in Canada where they're trying to say, hey, look, professors need this academic freedom to say and question and do what they do best. And I really hope that gets some traction. But I'm not holding my breath.
And knowing that, conservatives on college campuses get ostracized by other students, they get insulted by other students. When I was at the University of Ottawa, I was called a pig for saying that men and women are different, that men and women do not necessarily have the same responsibilities in life. Why should conservative students continue to be motivated to fight this leftist cancel culture?
Because they're the cool kids now. They're the counterculture. Back when I was growing up, if you were a punk rock anarchist, those were the cool kids. Now it's like, if you're a conservative, you're edgy, you're the ones that are like questioning authority and that sort of thing. So, hey, I say join the fun and be a young kid who gets to question government and question authority and demand their rights to free speech. So it's actually, look, it's no fun being called horrible names, and ad hominem attacks just show the weakness of the left's argument. However, you can have a lot of fun if you're an active conservative, center-right, libertarian, what have you, classical liberal. These are all people who have found common ground on some really important issues such as free speech and academic freedom. And I say, fight for your rights, because if you don't fight now, over time, they'll just keep taking away more and more and more. And you've definitely seen that in Canada.
100%. How do you think conservatives on college campuses or classical liberals on college campuses can continue to fight against this type of leftist indoctrination, leftist propaganda and censorship?
Well, I think they can join forces. There's student groups, get involved. There's strength in numbers. There's camaraderie to be found in student groups. So find those like-minded student groups on campus, join up and take part and take action. There's one thing to be said if a professor assigns an essay and, you know what they're looking for and you kind of, play along. But you still have an option to hear from guest speakers, to engage in debate with like-minded peers, and to take a stand when necessary on things that are going to affect your life and liberty. That's what being a young college student's all about, right? And so don't be afraid to be bold and do what it takes to retain and fight for liberty.
100%, and the university year is starting extremely shortly, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how everything turns out. Thanks for joining me today, Jennifer. Where can people find your work?
So we're at thecollegefix.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So look us up. There's never a dull moment. I promise you that much.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
My pleasure.
Hey folks, if you're more interested in learning about what's happening here in Canada, more specifically in the capital of the country, in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, here at the University of Ottawa as well, you can always head on to ottawareports.com, and there you will find all of my content.